Hey Sam, thanks for reaching out to me, and I apologize for the delay in getting this back to you. I've just been playing a little bit of catch up here, um, and clearly I can see how you play Division One golf, and obviously you're a very good player, and you do a lot of things really well in your swing. So I just want to shed some light on what I think are the matchups in your swing and what causes you to have a bit of the miss that you have, which I think you mentioned in your email was kind of a block to the right, especially with the driver. And we'll go from there in terms of problem solving it. But the first thing that I would say is um, as we get older, the ability to rotate in the downswing kind of diminishes. So we lose a little bit of flexibility, maybe we lose a little bit of strength and coordination and the ability to side bend and things of that nature. And as that ability to rotate and get open diminishes, we need to sort of adapt just a little bit. And you've got a few moves in your swing that you're making that cause the club to tend to be a little bit too shallow in the downswing. And yes, you can be too shallow. I don't see many players that are too shallow. Most of the time, they're too steep. But in your case, you've got some pieces in there that are causing you to be a little bit too shallow. So let me first touch on those. So right off the ball, you don't set your wrist very much, or you don't have very much wrist cock in your golf swing. And what happens because of that is the forearms roll and the sweet spot goes back in behind the hands. And that can be a little bit problematic. I tend to see more players struggle from that position than I see play well from that position. And the reason why is because once you feel that golf club's center of mass or that balance point, that club, if you balance on your finger, would be somewhere right down here by the hosel. Once you feel that balance point kind of move in behind you, your brain is going to try to figure out a way to start moving that club more vertically. And that generally comes either by late supination of the forearm, which is what you're kind of doing here at the top, and that gets the club into a very, very across the line kind of position at the top. Now, you can play good golf. There's a lot of good players that have played from across the line at the top, but it has to be matched up with a lot of rotation of the body. And the problem with that is from this position, that center of mass being right here on the club, when you start rotating and you start applying that downward and outward force on that handle, that center of mass is going to work quickly to try to get in a line with that line of force. And so it's going to be a big shallowing move. It's going to be a big lay down move, and that club gets into a position right here where it's really trailing you, way too much. I tend to like to see the club at this last parallel kind of either in line with the hands or just slightly inside the hands. And so when it's this far behind you, your swing direction is very, very much to the right. Okay? It's very out in this direction. And what you're going to have to do is start finding a way to close that face. And the problem with that is that we can only twist that handle or twist that grip so much to square that face. The other mechanism for squaring that face would be to kind of early release our wrist angles like we're doing over here on the right, and kind of getting that shaft to line up that left arm a little bit prematurely. And that leads us to just a little bit of a kind of a stalled flip release to the ball. Now, this isn't bad, but I would say that the rate that your right arm is having to straighten here, causing you to lose a little bit of shaft lean, which is causing you to lose a little bit of compression and ball speed. And that's all kind of stemming because this sweet spot is just simply too far back behind your hands late. And then when you don't do it well, there's the block, and then when you time it well, you probably hit a tight little draw. So what I would say from here is when you look at, two moves that are happening is kind of the cancer here is number one, Sweet spot rolled in back behind us, gets across the line at the top, and then on the downswing, the shoulders stay too closed in the downswing. And the reason why they're so closed is because the hips are sliding forward and the chest is tilt and the spine is tilting back. So over here on the right, we've got a lot of axis tilt this way, and we've got the hips sliding forward. And the hips are sliding forward. It's kind of like a domino effect here. The hips are sliding forward because this angle between the left arm and the shaft, we're having to dump that out early to line that club face up because it's trailing us and it's too far behind it. So all this can kind of be traced back to your takeaway. This early roll inside, and I see a lot of players that have this. This is the position that gets us up and across the line at the top. So what we want to do is we want to kind of delay that just a little bit. Here's a decent example of what it would look like if it was just a little bit more delayed. So we like to see the butt of the club moving in, but we don't like to see a lot of forearm rotation. So we'd see the club more in line with the hands like this. And you can see he's just turning his shoulders. His right hand is staying on top of that grip for just a little bit, whereas your right hand is starting to rotate and get a little bit more, your left hand's working on top of the grip. And you can see quite a big difference in the club face angle. So when you look at this, I want you to make a correlation with club face angle is caused by forearm rotation, and the amount that the club head is inside your hands in this direction is caused by wrist flexion. So bowing or arching your wrist, flexing your wrist, gets the club head too far inside. Club face open in this vertical position comes from forearm rotation. So you've got both of those moves going on, and all I really want you to be doing early in the backswing is vertically hinging your wrist. Okay, so if you take this motion right here and say, here's the shaft. If you stood at address and you only cocked your wrist vertically like this, so only in radial deviation, no forearm rotations yet, you just cocked it up in the air like this, and then you started to pivot your chest, the club head would stay outside your hands like you see from Collin Morikawa over here. It'd get right up the forearm, face stays pretty square the whole way back, shaft starts to work vertically, and then it can kind of make a lay down move in transition, and it won't be too shallow. So that's what I would do where I would start with you. I would take a stick and I would put it in the ground back here on about the shaft plane, just inside the ball, and I would put it behind you, toward the camera, about 2 feet. So I'd want it to pretty much touch the hosel of the golf club, and I would make rehearsals, learning to hinge my wrist vertically and not flex and roll the forearms. And so what that's going to look like up here is when you get to the top, this forearm's not going to be so supinated, and the club's not going to point that far across the line. It's going to point more over in this direction. And I know you're thinking, well, geez, isn't that into a more shallow position? Yes, it is, but the line of force when we transition is going to be in line with that, so the club's not going to want to shallow more. It's going to want to stay there. So it will technically be just a little bit steeper on the way down, and that will get the path less to the right, more in line, or even a touch to the left so you can hit a fade. But it will also get the face working more to the left, so you'll see more straight shots, tiny fades, instead of pushes, big push draws. Okay, so I hope this makes sense. The drill is, let's see if I have one on my example here. Don't have one. Thought I had one with a stick behind us, but um, I don't. But another example of those early forearm rotations would look like this. Club in line with the hand. Hands are moving in, but the club head staying in front of the hands. And then the shaft can kind of point over in this direction at the top. All right, hope this makes sense to you. If you need any clarification, please don't hesitate to reach out.